Hey guys, welcome back to Coin Knowledge. So today I want to go over a potential big catalyst, maybe the next big catalyst in crypto gaming that I see coming in the near future, as far as like a full release of the project. Obviously, we're going to be taking a look at Off the Grid here, a project that we've covered in the past, which arguably could be the top quality Web3 game that we have in the crypto gaming space. And as always, if you guys get value out of these videos, if you guys can like the videos and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything. So if you take a look here at Off the Grid. So Off the Grid is a game, kind of like a battle royale game by Gunzilla Games. Again, one that we've talked about quite a bit here, so we're not going to spend too much time. But the game looks very quality. We've seen gameplay of the game in the past. They do have their trailer here that you can watch. We won't watch right now. But what I want to highlight here is a tweet over here by Johnny Hustlepedia. He actually put out the fact that today is a monumental day in crypto gaming because Off the Grid has officially opened its doors not only on PC, but it is now officially open for playtest for approved players on PlayStation 5. So the fact is, this is really the first crypto gaming or Web3 game that I've seen personally or aware of that is actually on console. So the fact that Off the Grid, now obviously you have to apply and be an approved player, but it is coming to PlayStation 5. I believe it's also coming to Xbox in the future. So I mean that's a huge step in the right direction for the industry as a whole, in my opinion. Now, if we take a look at Off the Grid, if you are interested in becoming an approved player, you can actually apply right here on their website. You can go to their Twitter, Off the Grid or Gunzilla Games. You can apply there as well. They have it, I think, as their pinned tweet. But you can get in here, apply, see if you actually play the game. I mean, they want you playing it. They want you to do feedback. But the game looks really, really solid. I've yet to have my personal hands on it, but everything I've seen about the game looks incredibly solid. I recommend go on there, try to find some videos of it. I know Dr. Disrespect and other influencers or content creators played it, so you can definitely find information on it. Now, what I'm looking at for Off the Grid, because we know that Off the Grid is going to be launching on Avalanche, with the Gunzilla subnet. So I expect this to be a huge push for Avalanche gaming as a whole ecosystem and potentially a push for the gaming narrative as a whole. Now, obviously, if you take a look at Avalanche here, it came down significantly from where it was, at the end of last year and the beginning of this year as well. I mean, we saw Avalanche get to, $60, so about about 3x down from local highs here of this cycle. And, at a sub $10 billion market cap, I think Avalanche is undervalued for everything that they're building out, especially when we take a look at, again, just earlier this year, they were at almost 23 billion. If you look at last cycle, Avalanche got up to about a 30 billion. So I think Avalanche is definitely undervalued right now. Now, with Off the Grid, when it does fully release, I believe it should be by the end of this year, hopefully holiday season, which I expect to be a big catalyst for crypto gaming as a whole, but traditionally Web 2 gaming as well. Holiday season is really where all the games really do get released. Now, I know there's some speculation of people saying that, gaming might not run until maybe GTA 6 comes out, but I think with stuff combined of all the major titles in the gaming space we've had launched this year, with Off the Grid and with traditional, Web 2 gaming kind of ramping up and being hotter around the holiday season, I expect gaming to have a potential chance to run another time before the year is done, but only time will tell. Now, if we take a look at it, when Off the Grid launches, I expect it to launch at a high, fully diluted evaluation, but again, only time will tell. Now, what that usually means is that people will look for lower market cap alternatives to, again, the main token in the spotlight, which in this case would be the Guns token for Gunzilla Games and Off the Grid. Now, if you take a look at some gaming projects in the Avalanche ecosystem that we've covered, again, in the past, I think I've gotten pretty beat up. Shrapnel is definitely one of them. I still like Shrapnel. I get this question occasionally about all these projects. I mean, Shrapnel is, it's about a 12x away from its previous all-time highs. Obviously, there's some dilution issues, but, they've reworked it since their initial TGE, so it hasn't been as harsh. But I do think that Shrapnel is one that could potentially get some liquidity injected into its token. Obviously, whenever Off the Grid does launch, I think people are going to be looking for similar kind of FPS games of that niche. If Off the Grid, launches well, if it actually does create a lot of hype and the game actually delivers, which again you're betting on that, but just seeing the quality of the game, I do think there's a strong chance that people will obviously flock to Off the Grid. But at a sub $10 million market cap on Shrapnel, I do think Shrapnel is, still undervalued. Yes, the dilution is still an issue. It's not one that I'd actively be holding right now or buying right now, but I would be maybe add it to your watch list. And again, nothing I say is financial advice, just giving you guys my opinion. I would be keeping an eye on Shrapnel for whenever Off the Grid does launch, because I think that's the immediate go-to competitor that a lot of people might be looking at when Off the Grid launches. If they see the market cap, if it is higher, or if they just want to pick a lower market cap option, if that makes sense, I think Shrapnel might be a lot of people's go-tos in that regard. And if Shrapnel does bring a lot of attention into the Avalanche gaming ecosystem, these are just a couple projects that I'd be looking at to ride the wave of the off the grid guns token launch. So Shrapnel is the first one. Bloodloop, and if you guys aren't aware of what these individual projects are, go on the channel. You can find videos on all three of these projects. We've covered them extensively and more in-depth, review-like videos on all of them. So the videos are there. You can go on there. You can find them. We're not going to do that in this video. It'd be a little bit longer if I did that on every individual video. Or I encourage you to do your own research on all of them. Now, Bloodloop is another one that, again, falls into the Avalanche gaming ecosystem. It actually did launch earlier this year, over the summer, so not that long, and it actually has been holding up, relatively good, especially when we compare it to stuff like Shrapnel, which, again, has kind of fallen below the initial TGE price, but, I think Bloodloop is another one that, one, has held up pretty good, has a decent player base. The game actually looks pretty fun. It kind of reminds me of almost like a Nyan Heroes, except on the Avalanche gaming ecosystem. But another Avalanche game that you can get in there, you can play it, people like it. It's a pretty low market cap, just like Shrapnel is. And I think when a huge game or huge Avalanche game launches like Off the Grid, and people are looking at that ecosystem, wanting to find, hey, what's the other potential games that could run off the wave of this big launch, I think Bloodloop is another good option. So, Bloodloop is another one that we've covered in the past. I mean, we saw that Bloodloop, it launched at around, 18 cents around there and quickly got all the way up to almost 50 cents, which is pretty insane because it was completely outside the norm. Crypto gaming was not running here over the summer. A lot of stuff was kind of going sideways, if not down. And Bloodloop kind of just stayed stagnant. It's still above, its TGE price, on the open market. So, again, that's pretty impressive. It can't be ignored. And I think Bloodloop is showing some strength, and I expect it to do well. One, when gaming runs, and when Avalanche Gaming also as a sub-narrative runs even harder with the launch of Off the Grid potentially. Again, all of this is really hoping and relying on the fact that Off the Grid has a successful launch, and people actually want to play the game, and it actually justifies the hype. There could be the argument made of, well, Web2 players are gonna like the game, but not see any point for the token. That's a whole other video that we've made in the past that we can touch on in the future again. But again, this is just my thesis here for Avalanche Gaming specifically around Off the Grid. Since again, it's the first game to get on PS5 and consoles, and I think that it is still, without a doubt, the most quality Web3 game that we have right now. And if we're looking for the game that potentially could send, gaming on a potential another run, I think Off the Grid has, the highest chance of that in the short to midterm. But again, I digress. So Bloodloop is number 2. Now, so far, obviously, we've covered Shrapnel and Bloodloop, which are individual games. They're not gaming ecosystems, gaming hubs, platform studios. They're more of like individual games, which is fine, but a little riskier. Now, one that I like a lot that I yell all the time, on this channel. I don't really yell, but I do cover it a lot. Playable Games. I tell you guys all the time that I think Playable Games is definitely being slept on, is definitely undervalued. Again, I have to stress, nothing I say is financial advice. When you get into stuff like this, lower market cap, especially sub 10 million, and gaming, when gaming has not been a narrative this year so far, the risk is definitely there. But if you can, have the conviction to hold some of these projects or DCA while the narrative is not hot, that's usually could potentially be the times where those pay off when the narrative does run. So you won't get ahead of this kind of stuff. But either way, Playable Games, I think, is, if you're looking at a, almost like a Myria or like a Corpo or like a Gala Games or GFL of sorts, kind of gaming studio, ecosystem play, this is it. On Avalanche, I mean, I say it every time, but to my knowledge, Playable Games is the most high quality, really the biggest, really the main and only, gaming ecosystem play hub on Avalanche. And, they also have their Bull subnet as well. And at a $5 million market cap, I mean, we can see here that, right now it's sitting at a hundredth of a penny, which is insane, especially when we look at the fact that, Playable Games got up over a penny, at the end of last year, end of 2023, whenever, gaming was hot, gaming was running, it got over a penny. I think it was like a $55 million market cap circulating. The dilution's actually not that harsh if you look into the vesting schedule. And, pretty insane. It's somewhere between a $5 to $10 million market cap, depending on where you look. But you can reach out to the team on Discord and find out. But again, either way, I think Playable Games completely undervalued in my opinion, and I think, again, this all relies on what happens with Off the Grid with that launch, and if gaming decides to run or not, or if it's just going to be another, hyped launch that kind of gets swept under the rug. I don't think that's going to be the case, but if it does actually, if we see it actually bring eyes back on crypto gaming and Avalanche gaming, I expect Playable Games to potentially fly with that narrative, riding off the coattails of, Off the Grid launch, because, they have solid games. This is actually one that we will pull up their website because, I like Playable Games a lot. Full disclosure, I obviously own Playable Games. I'll let you guys know that every time we cover it. Playable Games, they have their different games that are out right now. They have their Nexus games, like their flagship game. They have their nodes. They have all the other games that are in production or, on their roadmap. A lot of other games as well. Doc's team, their CEO, I think Old Bull and Young Bull, they're always active. They have their roadmap. I could sit on here and, say a lot about Playable Games, but we've made other videos quite often about them because, again, in my opinion, when you're looking at a project like this, perfect example where it's about a 10x down from where it was previously earlier in the cycle when gaming had a little bit of a sweet preview of what gaming could potentially do later on in the cycle, if that makes sense, showing, which of the runners potentially could run. I think that Playable Games, could 10x, still from its previous all-time highs, which from today's levels would be 100x. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know, but I do think if, Avalanche Gaming gets the hype I believe it's going to get, later on in the cycle with stuff like Off the Grid and other major titles coming to Avalanche, I think that Playable Games is definitely going to make a lot of sense for people because sometimes people like to invest more in like, gaming hubs, studios, ecosystems more than individual games because, again, you're betting on more than just one game like Shrapnel. You're betting on Shrapnel, Takeoff, or Bloodloop. Whereas Playable Games, you're betting on Nexus, Dogs of War, Ordium, War of Steel. You're betting on the other different games or Node ecosystem. They're subnet, they're bull subnet. So that's why it makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And at these levels, I think all three of these projects are pretty undervalued right now. But again, gaming isn't hot. We'll see what happens with Off the Grid and the Guns tokens launch. But let me know, guys, in the comments below if you guys have actually gotten your hands on Off the Grid, or if you haven't, if you've seen the gameplay, just let me know your thoughts on it. Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you guys are interested, what I'm doing in these markets, I do have my Patreon linked below. It's a great way to support the channel. It is optional, or I have the free Discord in there. You can get in there, ask questions, talk to others. Just join a small community and see if there's any questions you need answered. Be happy to do so. And as always, if you got value out of today's video, if you guys can like the video, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, see you guys.